It was the final hour of an empire. The sky wasn't just burning from cannon fire, it was bleeding. A scream ripped through the heart of Constantinople, not from soldiers, but from the palace itself. A scream so sharp it made priests drop their crosses and mothers cover their children's ears. From her shattered window, a 15-year-old princess watched the Queen of Cities collapse. Theodora Palaiologina, niece of the last emperor. In one breath, she saw her world fall. Towers crumble, domes crack, the gates torn open by Ottoman fire. And in the next, she felt the floor tremble. Not from bombs, from footsteps. Heavy, royal, deliberate. Sultan Mehmed II, barely 21, the boy who broke an empire. In 72 hours, what he did with Theodora inside those palace walls would rewrite history and expose a truth that both empires tried to bury for centuries. This isn't just a story of conquest. It's a tale of power, survival, and a silence more terrifying than war. Before we reveal what happened inside that blood-stained throne room, hit like if you've ever wondered what really became of royal bloodlines when kingdoms fell. And drop a comment below. What would you do if you stood before the niece of your sworn enemy? A girl with no army, no crown, just a name that echoed through centuries. Because what you're about to hear isn't myth. It's recorded in Ottoman court archives, confirmed by Byzantine witnesses like Dukas and Critobulus, and for centuries, suppressed by those who feared what the truth might mean. This is the moment conquest met legacy. And what happened next changed the fate of empires. May 29th, 1453. The day Constantinople fell. The gates of the city, once thought invincible, had been breached. Smoke twisted through the air. Churches echoed with final prayers. And while thousands fled or fought or fell, one girl stood still, too noble to run, too young to understand. Her name was Theodora Palaiologina, 15 years old, a niece of the fallen emperor. Hidden in a crumbling palace corridor, clinging to a rusted cross, she waited for what would come next. But what came wasn't a soldier with blood on his sword. It was silence. And then, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, not rushed like looters, not frenzied like executioners. Calm, royal. Sultan Mehmed II was 21, a boy in age, a conqueror in posture. He had taken the Queen of Cities by force, but now he moved through its shattered halls not as a raider, but as a ruler. When he found Theodora, she did not scream, she did not beg, she bowed. And in that moment, something shifted. She expected chains, she expected humiliation, perhaps death. But instead, the Sultan stared, not at her beauty, but at her bloodline. Palaiologina, he said, tasting the name like history on his tongue. He didn't order her dragged away. He didn't claim her as a spoil. He told his guards, "Do not touch her." The air in the room felt heavier than cannon smoke. One of his viziers blinked in confusion. A janissary shifted uneasily. But no one questioned him. Not here, not now. Because Mehmed was no mere barbarian at the gate. He had read Roman histories. He saw himself not as a destroyer, but as Caesar reborn. And Theodora? She would be his symbol. Not of conquest, of continuity. Theodora wasn't thrown into a dungeon. She was given silk. The day after Constantinople fell, she was moved, quietly, discreetly, to a villa outside the city walls. Not a prison, not a palace, something in between, a place where marble walls muffled questions and golden trays delivered obedience. The guards never spoke, the servants never looked her in the eye. But everything she needed was provided: food, perfumes, letters from no one. It wasn't captivity by force, it was captivity by design. In the newly claimed Topkapi court, rumors swirled. "She's a hostage," one vizier muttered. "No," another whispered, "she's a symbol." A Byzantine princess under Ottoman rule, proof that even bloodlines bow to Mehmed. But Mehmed himself remained distant. He didn't visit, not yet. Instead, he sent scholars, women from his harem, fluent in Greek. a eunuch who once studied law in Trebizond. They asked her questions, not about rebellion, not about resistance, but about history, about Roman customs, about her family. She gave short answers, carefully measured. She knew this was a test. Outside, the city burned and was reborn. Churches became mosques. The Hagia Sophia echoed now with Arabic prayer. Latin merchants either fled or converted. But inside the villa, Theodora's world was frozen in time. One night she woke to a sound, soft leather shoes on marble. Mehmed. He didn't speak at first, just looked. Not at her body, but at her posture, her control, the way she didn't flinch. "You hate me," he said finally. She said nothing. "I could have had your head carried through the streets, and still they would have called me merciful." He stepped closer. "But instead, I want you educated, federal, dressed in dignity. Do you know why?" Her voice didn't tremble. "Because you want the world to see a Christian girl survive under a Muslim crown." He smiled, but not with joy, with recognition. "You understand more than your uncle ever did." And then he left, not touching her, not yet. She sat in silence, not because she chose to, but because there was nothing left to say. Theodora, last princess of Byzantium, had once walked marble halls under golden domes. Now she was locked inside a room with no windows, no mirrors, and no voice but her own thoughts. The city outside had burned, her empire had died, and she was still here. A single oil lamp flickered against the stone. Her gown, torn and soot-stained, still carried the scent of smoke and prayer oil. She held an icon in her hands, not because she still believed it would save her, but because it was the last thing no one had taken. Then the door opened. He didn't stride in like a conqueror. He walked like someone who already knew he owned everything. Sultan Mehmed II, just 21 years old, but already a name whispered with dread across Europe. The man who had shattered the walls of Constantinople now stood in front of its last princess. He said nothing. She stood, didn't bow. Her defiance was quiet, but it was there. Her chin trembled, her hands didn't. Mehmed studied her, not like a man studies a woman, but like a strategist evaluates the last piece on a chessboard. He raised a hand, not in violence, but to gesture. Attendants entered. They carried silk, not gifts, not robes of honor. Ottoman garments, foreign, imperial, unmistakable. Clothes that would erase Byzantium stitch by stitch. Theodora flinched. The message was clear. Your name, your lineage, your history, it ends here. She didn't scream, didn't plead, but as they draped her in unfamiliar cloth, her body shook with something worse than fear. The slow realization that survival would mean disappearing into someone else's story. Before leaving, Mehmed placed something at her feet, a veil. Then he turned and walked out, without ever laying a hand on her. He didn't have to. In that moment, the war was over, and she knew exactly what it meant to lose. She was not chained. There were no guards posted outside her door, and yet Princess Theodora had never felt more trapped. After the fall of Constantinople, she had been taken not to a dungeon, but to a palace. A chamber of luxury, with silken cushions, jeweled mirrors, and incense that never stopped burning. But the scent of rose and saffron couldn't mask the truth. She was a prisoner in velvet. Each morning, women would arrive to bathe her, dress her, paint her face. Not out of kindness, out of preparation. Because she wasn't just a captive, she was being groomed. Mehmed never visited her, but his silence was louder than footsteps. It meant she was being watched, judged, readied. Theodora stopped speaking to her attendants, not because she was defiant, but because she was unraveling. Every reflection in the mirror reminded her of who she used to be. A Byzantine princess, a symbol of resistance, now reduced to an ornament in a gilded cage. One evening, a eunuch entered. He did not speak, only handed her a scroll. A poem. Not in Ottoman Turkish, but in Greek. Its final line read, "The flower that blooms in darkness never forgets the sun." She held it all night, unsure if it was a message or a warning. Because behind the beauty of her prison lay a terrifying uncertainty. Would Mehmed use her as a pawn, a concubine, a trophy? No one told her, and that silence was the cruelest cut of all. The summons came at twilight, a soft knock on the chamber door, a whisper from the eunuch. "He is ready." For weeks, Theodora had lived in fear of this moment. Now, it was here, and it felt unreal. She walked in silence through corridors that glowed with lantern light, each step echoing like a funeral bell. At the end of the path stood Mehmed, not in armor, not on a throne, but in simple robes, standing beneath a carved dome of stars. He didn't smile, he didn't leer. He only looked at her, long, quiet, calculating. Then at last he spoke. "I conquered cities," he said, "but they tried to keep you from me." As if you were the true prize, Theodora said nothing. She didn't lower her gaze. She had nothing left to fear. But what came next was not what she expected. Mehmed did not touch her. He did not demand or threaten or claim. Instead, he offered her a choice. "You can stay," he said, "as a guest in this palace, with silks, gardens, and peace. Or you may return to what remains of your people, with a promise that no harm will come to you." Silence stretched between them. It wasn't mercy. It was strategy. A sultan offering peace wrapped in the illusion of kindness. Theodora understood. Her answer wouldn't just define her fate. It would define her legacy. She looked at him, this man who had shattered her world, and she nodded once. "I will return," she said. He inclined his head, not as a ruler, but as a man who had won something more subtle than a battle. And so she left, escorted through the gates of a city no longer hers. But Theodora's story did not end in that palace. It began there, reborn not as a princess in chains, but as a survivor who had stared down the empire's greatest weapon and walked away.